Hi, everyone, and welcome today. We appreciate you being here from all parts of the country. This is the US and Canada Local User Group event, leveraging ALM and VERA for risk-based testing in CSV. Today's event is sponsored not only by the US and Canada local user groups that are specific to this industry, mainly the pharmaceutical industry and life sciences, as well as Micro Focus and TX3 services. So on that note, we have two excellent speakers on the agenda for today. Dori Gonzalez Acevedo is the VP of Strategic Solutions for TX3 Services. She has 20 years in the pharmaceutical experience in the pharmaceutical industry, specializing in the regulatory and compliance strategy, as well as computer systems validation. And today, in her role as the VP of Strategic Solutions at TX3, she helps to expand their services with a focus on increasing the current use of tools and advancing client understanding, which she's going to help you with today. And joining Dori is Ajay Pandey, who's the Senior Manager of the ALM platform at Biogen. He's got over 19 years experience in management and governance of the ALM SDLC tool sets. In that industry. And Ajay has been a longstanding Vivid member and contributor. So his presence today is as a subject matter expert, and his views and thoughts that he's going to share with you all today may not necessarily be shared by his employee, Biogen, his employer, and nor should it any mention of TX3 or Micro Focus products, be interpreted as endorsements. He's really here as a Vivid member, sharing best practices with you all. So excited to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Okay, and just a little bit of housekeeping really quick, so you know how to engage on this event. It is live, but it is being recorded. And those recordings will be sent to you on a link in an email so that you have access to that, as well as the slide deck. And then if there's any Q&A that we don't get to and such, we'll post that as well. So, but definitely take advantage of having these experienced speakers today. So think about some questions you may want to ask them. And as we go along, you can type them in the questions pane in the webinar control panel. And we'll show you that really quick on the next slide, just so you have, yeah. So this is where, you can submit it. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see that GoToWebinar control panel. Go down to the questions pane and type it in, and then just click send. So that's how you can communicate to the speakers, and we'll get to the questions at the end of their presentation. Okay, so thanks everyone, and Dori, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thanks Terry. Well, thank you for taking the time, and Ajay, thank you for bringing me to Vivid. So this is my first time here at Vivid. I know you've shared lots of great experiences, so thanks for collaborating with me here.
Well, thank you, and welcome, Dori.
All right, so I know we don't have a lot of time, and this is a topic that you and I can talk for hours on. So I wanted to kind of cut to the chase a little, so we get in there. The fact of the matter is, CSV has become laborious and overburdensome in a lot of different areas. And one of the things that you and I share in common is wanting to do things better. How do we get better? How do we get more efficient? So today's topic is really focusing on risk-based testing and how can we leverage ALM and VERA in order to do that. Some of the best ways that I know to do that we're going to talk about today, but that really helps shifting organizing requirements and allows organizations to really focus on critical thinking, deploying the right testing tools and right testing methodologies, those controls that are with all of that process, and coming into the end with really a robust process that's reproducible, that actually focuses on quality rather than documentation. So, ready to start?
Yeah,
All
right.
right.
Let's go.
Cool. So on today's agenda, we're going to kind of go through how we're going to talk about risk-based testing and what's our definition for today. We'll go through some challenges and benefits, kind of how to quick start your program. We're going to get into a demonstration of ALM and VERA. And then we really want to leave time for Q&A for those on the phone that really want to ask questions, and here's their time to do that.
That's
All
good.
right, cool. So what is your definition of risk-based testing, Ajay?
So, this is a well-known term in industry, and in my opinion, this should be a science-based, or a data-based process to evaluate your requirements and come to a priority. You can go through GAM5 risk-based framework, or you can have your own custom risk-based solution. The end goal is from a product owner or a system owner is, the methodology we have adopted in this test all. I mean, that's the comfort factor you get from that, right? So in my opinion, if you have a repeatable framework for evaluating risk on your requirements, I think, that's my base understanding of it.
Yeah. So, and I know when I bring up this topic a lot, people want to know, well, which risks are you talking about? So I wanted to kind of just level set some expectations here, is that a risk-based approach can happen really at multiple levels, right? You can have it up at the application or the system level, a program level. You can do a lot of great risk analysis to really determine complexity of your application and your business needs. And those are all really important parts of your overall risk-based approach for your CSV.
Yep.
Today, though, we're going to really specifically talk about the scope of where you're prioritizing risk for your features, for your user requirements and or your functional requirements, so that you can really hone in on the testing effort that's really needed. Right? So where are you going to get those added bonuses? And so that kind of leads me to my next bullet point around, what do you think, what are some of the things that enhance the CSV program once you get this risk-based testing in place?
Right. So being in software quality and project management for a long time, I think biggest bang for your buck comes, of course, in CSV, it is the compliance, right? You get that, and time to market, basically. So any product or system or services you're testing, you can significantly reduce your execution testing timeline, basically. So that is right there. And it's not just in life science. You can apply this methodology in non-life science testing. So that's huge. And then once you have the risk priority, you basically most of the issues are identified early in the cycle, right? So if you have done your work on risk priority correctly, then you can focus on that, right? And based on the amount of work you have in your bucket, risk priority really help. And I think in my experience, it's high time now that customers should look into this.
Yeah. So this is not something new. This is not something that we've been talking about this for over a decade, if not more. And as well as I see, many organizations still yet can't adopt. And that really is kind of the heart of our conversation today around, why can't we adopt? What are really the challenges within organizations to really be able to shift this way from other things? Some organizations want to adopt DevOps and Agile and all do all this stuff, but yet some basic principles around risk-based approach is not yet fully adopted. So what are some of your thoughts?
So what I have seen and experienced is the comfort factor, right? We are too comfortable in doing what we are doing. We run with the mentality that if it's not broken, why to touch it, right? And this this never sets the stage to move on to a new practice, a new body of knowledge, a new way of doing things, and basically, we never kickstart. Though, as you said, we are talking about this for a decade now, right? But, I don't know how many, orgs have successfully and done this work, so yeah, I think these are the two main hindrances for quick adoption of this RBT approach.
One of the things you just said really sparked a thought with me, because a lot of when I get into a company and I ask, so are you doing risk-based approach, and what does it look like, and how are you doing it? And they say, well, we do all this and this, and we say this is this and this risk and this risk. But then I say, well, what do you do with that? What is the actual action, and how does that transpire, and what do you do moving forward with that? Do you really organize your testing cycles according to risk? Do you really set up your regression testing based on that risk? Or are you just doing this exercise because it's a checkbox, right? And not really sure, or maybe you don't have the right people in the room, or whatever those things are, right, to be able to effectively really make sense of those actions. So I get that a lot, right? Like, yeah, we're told to do risk, but what am I supposed to do with it then? You also spoke about the comfort factor and the cultural shift. One of the things that I really try to help folks around with the paradigm shift of documentation, right? Like, the old school kind of thoughts around, if it's not documented, didn't happen, and we need these actual physical documents, and we need to PDF them, and we need to put them in and put them out. You and I are huge advocates for using the system for what it is. It's a system that records electronic records, electronic signatures in the way that we deploy ALM with VERA, so that companies don't have to do all that stuff anymore, right?
Great. And Dory, to your point, last year was the way the COVID hit us and this epidemic, and how the teams were dispersed. But I have not seen any interruption in any of my project because of the way we have used the system. If it was purely on paper, it would be a struggle, right? In my opinion, I think sooner we get into electronic systems, the better it is for the whole SDLC.
So what are some of those, so we talked a little bit about some of the cost savings. What are some other cost savings that you see when you actually deploy a true risk-based testing approach?
Apart from the testing cost, I think, the rework, because everyone knows the version of the requirement, and risk assessment has to go hand in hand with your requirement management, right? The day you have to partner with your compliance, your system owners, your technical partners, right? It is a joint effort. It's not a siloed approach that I will write something and somebody else will review it and somebody else will risk assess it. It's not going to work that way, and it has to be partnership. And we always talked about the fundamentals of quality of a design, basically, but issue or flaws start as soon as you design something, right? So it's embedded in it. So if all the partners, all the stakeholders are together, then the chances of a bug getting introduced into the system is less, or it can be identified or mitigated early in the process. So that's some of the biggest advantage, apart from cutting down your execution timeline or testing budget and things like that.
Yeah. I like what you're saying, and I want to expand on that with the strategic testing, and you want to talk through this slide, because I think this really kind of shows, if we don't start leveraging this, what are we really talking about here?
Correct. And if you see this slide, this is a very conservative slide, and you can see the various different kind of application any large enterprise has, right? And they have some, depend on the kind of, if it's a configurable COTS system or if it's a in-house developed system, right? They have to maintain this, and in life science, multiply this by that the number of documents, right? The amount of effort we put in managing and maintaining this document, plus the technical stuff, right? Coming from the vendor, coming from our internal business demands, the requirements is huge, right? It directly relates to dollars. And then on top of it, you factor in the personnel, attrition. We all have MSP models. We all have, offshore, on-site kind of resources, right? We all know that model, and that knowledge attrition is critical in this. So if your documentation is at par, or it's in an electronic format, or if you have risk assessed correctly and given priorities to your requirements, then you can mitigate some of these challenges, which every team, every system owner, or every organization, in my opinion, face and counter.
Yeah. I mean, this goes direct to dollars. I mean, and that's what ultimately, has everyone talking and wants to do, right? Everyone wants to get things cheaper, right?
Yes.
But one way to do that, you actually have to spend those upfront dollars to do a proper risk assessment, to then narrow your scope, right? So if you can imagine your ERP systems where you're really defining what is your intended use and what are your critical features of those, the volume of testing sometimes I see in some of these large applications is something that is just you're getting your added value there, right? The other experience that I know you experience as well is, a lot of COTS applications, folks are not leveraging customer documentation or really understanding their specific intended use so that they can reduce the overall scope of their responsible testing, because the FDA never says you have to test everything. They never said that. They never will. That's not the intention. The intention is really to understand your business process and how it matches to the predicate rule. And that's what's really on the hook here, right? It's not this blanket testing and blanket requirements.
Right. And duplication of effort, right? If it's tested, why to test it again?
Absolutely.
It's there.
It's there. All right. So where do we start? What are some of the needs that need to be considered? You mentioned a couple, and I'm just going to kind of put out all of the bullet points here because you mentioned a couple as we were talking, like this concept of really understanding your quality partners and building that trust. And I know we probably have several quality partners as well as IT partners on the line today. You and I are constantly in conversations with those quality partners, right? Because I'm from a quality background, and then I'm from on the IT side, and some of the IT folks never had quality, or some of the quality folks had never had IT, right? It's talking, coming to a common understanding, I guess.
Yeah, common understanding, and we all know, right? When any org we are part of, we know our maturity level. We know and where we stand in if we benchmark our org in terms of maturity to other organization or to industry. We all know that, right? We all have our plus and minuses. When we work with a team or a system or in a company, right? So you need to assess that. I mean, I think that's the first thing you need to do, because what we are saying about RBT here in this demo or in our thought process is it's not going to work magically. You have to prep the ground to build a program on top of it. So in my opinion, you have to do a honest assessment, bring in all those stakeholders I talked about, your quality partner, technical partners, and do that assessment. And so you have seen in this previous slides how many releases you have to go through, year after year to maintain and manage these systems. So that has to be done. Once you have that, if you encounter any gaps, it's not a overnight thing, right? It takes years to build these kind of maturity. So start working towards that, and then basically bring in your risk-based testing approach, and your PMO will be happy, because now you are, your timeline has shrunk, your dollars, you are efficiently or utilizing in other priority programs in your organization. So I think it has to start with a honest assessment internally.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying about honest, and I think that also brings the word trust in there, right? It's taking those small steps, and while you've laid down the foundation with your business partners, it builds that trust. It builds the trust within your teams, and you're able to then incrementally grow over time and build on that trust, so that when you want to adopt robotics framework, right, they don't freak out because you've already laid the groundwork to get you there, right?
And if you remember 10 years back, anyone talks about AI, it talks about cloud-based system in life science. We knew how it was a knee-jerk reaction, right? And now it's a common parlance, right? We all have, I think most of the companies are moving towards that. I mean, but 10 years back, I remember, what is that? What is cloud?
Exactly.
Exactly.
What is it? What happens?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look. So ALM with VERA, we can do a lot of different things. We've collaborated personally together to do a lot of fun stuff.
Yes.
You can use ALM native features to really be able to plan your releases and cycles in any way that your business process wants. So you could do Agile, you could do Waterfall within the same tool. It's a matter of how you organize your releases and cycles, and it's actually utilizing the full features of ALM from beginning to end. A few thoughts about getting some of this established, because I know this can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, and I have encountered this when the tool recommended by vendor on the best practice is not followed, right? And planning is, whatever your methodology is, the tool can accommodate. Technology was never a challenge, never posed. I think technology has surpassed regulation long time back, right? We all know that. And any tools you have in-house, think through it, and see how it can best fit for your needs. And with time, as you mature with the process, you can tweak them or bring in another tool set. You don't have a war-like tool chest to really get onto this program. You can incrementally build it. Use what you have today, and then bring in based on your maturity level.
Yeah, that's a great point. With ALM for VERA, you can also review and approve a variety of requirement types based on your specific business process. So with VERA, just kind of a quick glance here of what it looks like, we can literally lift and shift your business process. So if you do user requirements, functional requirements, design requirements, and you have unique reviewers and approvers for each of those pathways, it's all configurable, right? So we can really give you and translate your business process to the tool so that you can have it all within one location, and you don't have to keep it out in a separate location. You can have it all there. The other is you can then do risk assessment. So our out-of-the-box features, like you mentioned before, follows GAMP 5,
right. Yep.
Which is pretty much like 95% of the time, my customers are taking the standard GAMP 5 approach. There are folks that will tweak it a little bit, that really want specific to how they have interpreted their own business risks, and we can do that as well. But for the most part, people are pretty comfortable with GAMP 5. It resonates, it holds up in audits, and people are pretty comfortable with it. Any thoughts about that?
No, I think it's the way VERA out of the box is configured with GAMP 5. I think it's a huge catalyst in adopting this
right.
RBT.
Really, just some place to start too, right? Yeah. Like, so if you don't have a program at all, you start with a best practice standard to get you started.
Correct. And we all have SOPs, and we all have our own internal processes, but the way I have observed is that VERA is very, very configurable system, and all you have to decide is on what requirement types you want to do risk assessment.
Yeah. So if you build your release plan and you build your requirements, you actually then can build in your traceability as you go, right? So it's not waiting to the last, like in a waterfall sort of way, right? You can actually build it incrementally as you're designing your applications to get everything you need.
Yep. Yep. And that's the biggest ever. This view is $1 million view, honestly, and it's not, I mean, for so many years, I don't know why, but I have not seen folks using this, I mean, personally, but it tells you exactly where you stand in terms of your coverage on the requirements. So it's a great view to look at it at a very high level, honestly.
I mean, ALM has phenomenal, release and cycle management, and the new 15 has an enhanced reporting that allows you to really you don't have to make your own Excels. I see a lot of people like wanting to dump out a whole bunch of custom SQL and do their own thing. You really don't have to. It's all there if you just look, right? And that makes all data in is good data. If it's not good data, it's not great reports, right? So you need to make sure you use each of your modules, right, from beginning to end in order to get that full view.
Agreed.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we're gonna almost get ready into the demo portion, and I just wanted to briefly kind of go over, because VERA extends the ALM features in a variety of ways. Probably the most notable one is our dynamic approval workflow and e-signatures. We really can customize for your business needs, as we've been talking, but today we're really going to focus on the demo on the risk assessment feature and the functionality, where we do provide GAMP5 risk-based for any requirement type that you want. We can put it on, and we also have, out of our out-of-the-box solution, we recommend risk scenarios as a type of requirement, so that if you really want to do FMEA type of risk scenarios, that's there for you, right? Where you can do risk scenarios based on your application and link those to specific user requirements or functional requirements within your tools.
Right, agreed. And traditionally we do on business regulatory, security, you can pick your requirement types and configure VERA on that. And that's the beauty of the software. But on top of it, risk scenario is something very interesting. But we have to prep our, the maturity.
Yeah, it really does.
Exactly.
We also have the ability to configure, to enforce mitigation strategies, right?
Yes.
And that is really helpful for the quality group to know, hey, if someone's flagged something, a high risk scenario, I want to make sure that those business analysts, kind of consider what are those mitigation strategies. So that's part of our out of the box feature as well.
Right. And what it will highlight, if you do it right with VERA, then many times IT is totally disconnected with the procedures, the quality, right? and what this mitigation control does is basically expose those, but many of the things are covered procedurally. You don't have to have a technical controls for that, right? So bringing that requirement and the risk assessment piece together, basically, get that kind of exposure to both parties, IT as well as the compliance.
Yeah, great. And then obviously, then once you're finished doing all that assessment, you can review and approve your requirements. And so I'm going to pause for a second, freeze this frame so I can switch over to the demo, so I can clear up my screen here. But we're going to walk through the demo and show you a variety of, all right, so now you see my ALM, correct?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to log in here into our demo environment with the right password. I was hoping things didn't time out on me, but they did. Okay, so VERA is tightly integrated with ALM, and it really is, for those of you that are ALM users, you almost wouldn't know that VERA is there until you try to do something and you're like, oh no, I can't do anything. Why can't I do anything? It's because VERA controls your workflow, right? And so how that manifests is really this little button up here called the VERA Action Menu button. It really drives and pushes all that workflow out. Behind the scenes, there's client installs and all that sort of stuff. But from an end user perspective, you actually don't really know you're in anything different other than ALM.
Correct. And that's my experience too, using this for the last 3 years. It's really embedded in, it's like a, navigation element for part of ALM.
Yeah. So in the GUI, there's three main ways in which you can actually do risk assessments. And I like to use this view because I get to see a lot of the metadata on an individual requirement at one time. So I kind of set this up so that I can see all my risk fields, my priorities, even my target cycles. And it's as simple as updating the GUI right in here, where if you update your detectability and your severity, it will automatically start calculating any changes in your overall risk priority. So you can do it on an individual requirement to requirement basis, which is nice to be able to do that when you're doing it on a point solution. But there's other ways too. So if you can use standard ALM features and update selected, if you highlight a bunch that these happen to be in draft, and you right click for here, and you can use update selected, right? This, again, standard ALM features, you can update these right all at once. So if I wanted to change all the current risk detectability from high and put these to low and update them, I can update all of that right at one click, right? So the mechanisms to be able to do that on an individual or even a multiple basis in the GUI is really simple.
So to add here, Dory, and that makes it very important how you organize your requirements for your application. If you organize it well, module by module, sub-module by sub-module, this task of risk, so the seeds are sown way too early, how you basically write your requirements and organize it, and makes it very easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I'm going to show you another way in which I help folks do this, because often it is the case that you're doing requirement risk assessment in a group. You're in a room or you're on a webinar call together where you have all your users contributing to the conversation about, is this feature, risk detectable high? Is it low? What is the real severity around all of that? And so in those cases, I recommend doing it in a CSV file or an Excel file where VERA can then upload those right into the GUI at a click. So you have this conversation, you really vet out exactly what you guys want as a team, and then it's there and it's available to you to be able to upload. And I'm going to demonstrate that. So it's the VERA data import utility, and it's just a button in your toolbar. And I go out and I look for that file that I have. And I've already decided where I want that all to go in that file by identifying the path or the subject of the folders. And it gives me a confirmation of what I'm going to include. These are all the fields that I'm going to include. For this demo purposes, I didn't add in everything, but I'm going to import 5 requirements. And I literally click the import button. It goes through the exercise. It does a data check in the background to make sure that the fields that I've updated make sense to the configuration for your customer configuration. So it's smart like that. And then it tells me that I've successfully imported. If I had failures and some of that data point was wrong, it will tell me I was wrong and why I was wrong, and then I could go back and fix that data. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to show you that just came over, and they all kind of populated in this URS folder down below. So here are the requirements I just uploaded with their associated risk scenarios. So now I have draft requirements in here, and I've organized them with my team. I'm confident of what they should be in terms of their risk scenarios, as well as their descriptions, etc. And now I can go about the process of reviewing and approving these. And so to do that with VERA, it's really very simple. You can do it on an individual by individual basis by selecting the entity you want and clicking your VERA Action Go button. The VERA Action menu will appear, and you will get this dialog box. Now, it could be bigger or smaller depending on who I am in the system for this project. I have the ability right now to be able to perform on this individual requirement the white appropriate buttons. The gray buttons, I don't have access to at the moment on this particular requirement. And if I hover over that, it will tell me exactly why. I can't approve this task right now because it's currently draft, or I can't revise this because it's currently draft. All of these actions are unique to me as the user groups that I am in this particular project, and unique for the entity that I'm selected on. Now, if I select a whole folder and I'm going to do a mixed folder so that you see a couple of different things. So if I select this system access folder where I have more items underneath and who I am as the user, you see my VERA action menu is now different. I have a couple of different actions that I can do and a couple of actions, again, because it's looking at all the entities within that individual folder. Okay, so say I'm good to go and I want to start routing things for approval. I'm going to start at the start approval route. And given that I selected a folder, it's going to evaluate that entire folder and the subfolders in that folder to figure out, hey, what can I do with those? And if you hover over each of these items, it will tell you a brief description of what those items are. So for example, password restrictions is currently a requirement. It's a requirement ID 53, it's GXP, it's currently routing for approval. Here are all the risk scenario, risk assessment fields and how it's rated at the moment. It didn't have a mitigation strategy because it was low. And here's the brief description. And you'll notice I can't do anything with it. And it actually says I can't do anything with it because it's currently routing for approval. It's not draft. So I can't route something again because it's already routing for approval. But if I click on this first login change, the status of this is draft. And so I am able to click on the checkbox, or I can multi-select in multiple checkboxes and route in bulk or individual all the requirements that I want to route for approval. So I'm going to select all of these for demonstration purpose, and I'm going to click OK. When I do that, it brings up the route template. And so this is identifying who needs to be part of the approval panels for the selected entities that I chose. And in this case, how I have it set up is that it's going to go to the content originator, which happens to be myself. After I sign at level 1, the business approval is next in level 2, and then a quality approval. This is all configurable for who you are or your organization based on requirement type, based on whether GXP, non-GXP. Some folks want to do it based on work streams, all configurable based on metadata fields that you have. This is applicable in every module. Okay, so it's not just, today we're just focusing on requirement module, but it's applicable in every module. So I'm gonna click Start Route, just so we can see some items here and how they manifest. And I'm gonna open up this folder, and you'll see several of them now routing for approval. Okay, if I select one of these routing for approval that we just did, and I click on the approval route menu field down below, you'll see exactly what you saw in the VERA action menu, where you have the level 1, 2, and 3. The first level is now in progress. The level 2 and 3 are not. Okay, and if I go to approve this level as content originator, that is who I am at the moment, I'm going to go back and I'm going to click my VERA action menu. And I'm going to, now that it's already routing, I'm going to select approve task. So now I have the approval task window. As you can see on the left-hand side, right now I'm only a role as a content originator. If I was in this project as multiple different roles, I might have more options here, like business or quality, to be able to sign for the specific task that was for me and that particular role. For the moment, I'm going to sign as a content originator. Every task has 3 options. You can always reassign, where you can select any other person in that particular group that really needs to be there, or I can reject that task and say why, right? You have to enter a reason in order to reject, and then you would press done. I'm not going to do that for demonstration purposes. And then the option is you can approve. And so when you hit the approve button, you are prompted by your electronic signature message that you are now going to be applying your electronic signature and who you are, and that's the meaning of the signature. So in this instance, I was the content originator. If I was in there as quality, it would say quality, etc. Once I enter my username and password, spell it correctly, and click done, you'll now notice while the routing for approval has not changed status, but my signature for level 1 is now complete and level 2 is now in progress. You just continue on that path in order to get to that full level of approval. Again, you can do this in bulk or a single approval, depending on I like to often review requirements all at the same time and then just go in and apply my signature.
Very good.
All right, so I'm going to pause there. That was really a deep dive, really super specifically into how to get risk assessment and requirements approved in ALM with VERA. And I really wanted to leave time for questions and answers. So I'm going to pause my screen, pull back up my other slide, and we can open up the lines.
Yeah, thanks, Dory and Ajay. I really loved that exchange and his experience weaving into, your knowledge of your product line and such. So thank you for sharing that. We do have several questions so far that have come in from the audience. So I'll also give you a quick reminder to go to the questions pane on your control panel and go ahead and type in your questions so that we can have these guys answer it quickly for you. So I'm going to start out with the first one that came in. Are there specific application types or application areas that you recommend piloting a new risk-based program such as this?
Go ahead, Ajay.
Yeah. So I would definitely try to do a sample of applications, a COTS application and a custom application, so you get both flavors, to start with this program for piloting. That would be my recommendation.
Viva is also one that I say off the bat. For those of you that have Viva that know the burden of quarterly or 3-time-a-year releases, where you really need to be super specific about what you want to test, Viva is often a great user example to start off in.
Okay, awesome. And the next question then that has come in, what type of supporting documentation do you typically need to show auditors to justify your testing based on risk assessments?
Go ahead, Dory.
No, you go.
That's your question.
All right, so here's the deal. It's really a matter of comfort level of what you show an auditor. A customer like Ajay knows his system really, really well and can leverage the actual ALM system to show that information. That might not be the comfort level that you're at within your organization to be able to present that. One of the reports that I showed is a simple RTM that we make into a button that is easily accessible to you to be able to get a true RTM that allows you to pull in all those fields to get a snapshot of time of what you want when you want it. And that's the easiest and most simplest way to get there.
Agreed.
Good answer. Thank you. And then at what point in an application's lifespan does a risk profile need to be reevaluated?
So need to be reevaluated really often comes with major feature changes or intended use changes, right? So if the application is onboarding a new module, right, that would be an indication to really update and make sure that the risks associated to your application are good. If your vendor went through a major upgrade and said, hey, we just built a whole bunch of new features and these are what they are, it's really important to be able to assess your risk then. Then the other, from a quality side, if you're not using periodic audits or periodic reviews, I really encourage you to use that to be able to have the time to evaluate overall applications and where they're at from an overall risk perspective.
Okay, and this is probably a very practical one that a lot of people have. How do you migrate documents from old systems to VERA?
It's a great question. That is happening, and that happens a lot. And so I think that there's a conversation about what's really needed in order to move forward. Complementary to the regulations of your company that might say that you need documents for 25, 30 years, right? And so there's a balancing act there. Obviously, there's archive tools that we can use in order to do that, but not necessarily all data needs to be moved forward. And you can use a risk-based approach to say that too, right? So if in the past you didn't use risk-based approach and you're migrating to a new tool or new utility and coming to VERA, you can then do your risk assessment and say, hey, we only need this 25% because this is where the intended use really is, and start there rather than pulling everything over.
Okay, hopefully that helped answer the question. I also wanted to mention before we get on to some of the next questions, we also have a pre-sales engineer expert from Micro Focus that can field any more detailed ALM questions too about the integration. So just wanted to mention that. So feel free to enter questions away. We have another one for you guys. Can this be applied to newly installed applications undergoing their initial validation? Or should it only be applied to regression testing scenarios on existing applications?
I think it can be done both ways. I think the right time is when you have onboarding a new system in your org. But that's a good segue. Get into risk RBT.
Yeah, I think we also just to mention that with folks evaluating CSV and CSA, right, and how they are the same or different, right? Here's another point in time where a lot of programs can evaluate, how do we move forward, right? And what does this new paradigm look like, and how can we leverage more risk-based approaches in a CSA model if we're shifting out of a CSV model?
Okay, I'm just gonna check and make sure. I believe that we've gotten to all the questions that have come in from the audience. We do have a little bit of time if there's anything more that anyone wants to ask, or Dory or Ajay, any comments that you kind of went more quickly on in the essence of having time, or we can get to kind of some of the closing slides.
Well, I know Ajay and I are going to talk about this more. I'm going to interview him for our podcast of Software Quality Today. And I think a lot of these conversations, and I encourage folks that are on the phone to start having them. And like in Vivid, I think is a great place to have it, but within your own organizations. And I know a lot of folks have asked me about like doing lunch and learns and things, just to spark conversation and to be able to have that within a broader group and within your organizations. I think that would really help.
Agreed. Some of us are ahead in the journey than others. Reach out. I'm willing to share my experiences and approaches I have taken and the encounters I have. Yeah, please reach out and we'll.
Yeah.
Okay, and actually, before we go on to the closing slides, then one other plug then that I just want to mention, because these two key speakers, you know, are Ajay's in the Carolinas area, and we have an active user group there, and Dory's in the Mid-Atlantic, and TX3 has supported a lot of our local user groups as well. And I'm just hoping and saying that, like, to see us get back to that maybe in the, you know, fourth quarter or so of this year, that, you know, it's just really great to see your peers face to face and learn and exchange and get some more hands-on on the demos as well. I mean, webinars and virtual definitely has a place, but I really think expanding your network, hopefully you guys can support our local user groups too here down the road.
Agree.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so all right. Was there a slide closing that you wanted to show first, Dory, or?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to our speakers. That was a great exchange of knowledge. This presentation, a reminder that it has been recording. We'll get you the link on the Vivid page where you'll find the presentation, the recording as well, so you can reference it. You can share it with your colleagues. Definitely send that link on once you receive it. And I also want to mention compliments from Micro Focus that all the live attendees, you're going to go into a drawing that we're going to hold here after we get the report from the platform for a LiveScribe Smart Pen. I think most everyone, the caveat is it's for US and Canada members only, and obviously Micro Focus employees or affiliates are not, you know, we want to save that for the customers and end users. So also please complete the survey as you exit. You know, it's going to pop up and it's really quick, and your feedback really helps us drive the community, what future topics you want to hear about, all that kind of stuff. So on that note, I just want to thank you all for your time. Thank TX3 and Micro Focus for this opportunity to share with the Vivid community. And I hope you all have a great day.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.